This is the most shocking alliance in WWE history. Roman Reigns, the tribal chief who built his entire empire with Paul Heyman by his side, just returned to WWE alongside Brock Lesnar, of all people, to absolutely destroy Paul Heyman's newly formed Vision faction. And I am beyond furious because this means either Roman has completely betrayed the man who made him into the biggest star in wrestling, or there's a twist coming that's going to turn everything we thought we knew about the Bloodline, Paul Heyman's loyalty, and Roman's character completely upside down. What makes this even more mind-blowing is that Roman and Brock, two men who have been enemies for over a decade, who've had some of the most brutal matches in WWE history, who represent completely different wrestling philosophies, just stood side by side and demolished an entire faction with such coordination and chemistry that it looked like they'd been planning this alliance for months. I'm shocked at Roman abandoning Paul after everything they've been through together. I'm stunned that Brock would align with anyone given his lone wolf nature, and I'm about to break down every single devastating moment of this faction's destruction, explain the only ways this alliance makes sense given Roman and Paul's history, reveal why Brock Lesnar joining forces with Roman either elevates both men or destroys their individual mystiques, analyze what this means for Paul Heyman's Vision faction and whether they can ever recover, and expose whether this is WWE's most brilliant storytelling twist in years or the most character-destroying decision that ruins everything fans loved about Roman's tribal chief persona. Let me describe this explosive return and attack because every detail matters in understanding how calculated and brutal this assault was. Paul Heyman's Vision faction, let's say it consists of Drew McIntyre, Braun Breaker, and possibly others, was in the ring cutting a promo about how they represent the future of WWE now that Roman Reigns has been absent and the Bloodline has crumbled. Paul was doing what he does best: eloquent trash talk about how he's moved on to manage real warriors who don't need family politics to succeed. Paul specifically mocked Roman's absence. Roman Reigns, the so-called tribal chief? He abandoned WWE when he realized his time was over. He couldn't handle the new generation taking his spot. But I, Paul Heyman, am always on the winning side. I don't need Roman Reigns anymore. I have the vision of what WWE will become, and these men standing beside me will make that vision reality. The arrogance, the disrespect. Paul essentially declared Roman irrelevant and positioned himself as having moved on to better things. That should have been Roman's cue to return for revenge against his former special counsel, right? But what happened next was even more shocking. Roman's music hit and the arena exploded. The tribal chief walked out looking more focused and intense than we've ever seen him. But then Brock Lesnar's music hit immediately after, and the crowd went from excited to absolutely losing their minds because nobody expected these two to be together. Roman and Brock walked to the ring side by side. Not as reluctant allies, not as enemies forced to work together temporarily, as partners who had clearly coordinated this moment. They entered the ring and immediately went to work on the Vision faction with devastating efficiency. Brock hit Drew McIntyre with an F5 within the first 30 seconds. Roman speared Braun Breaker so hard it looked like he broke him in half. Then they systematically destroyed every other Vision member. Suplexes, spears, domination that made it clear the Vision faction was outmatched. The assault lasted maybe 3 minutes but felt like a lifetime of brutality. And Paul Heyman? The wise man was frozen in the corner, unable to speak, unable to move, watching his new faction get absolutely demolished by his former client and Brock Lesnar. The look on Paul's face was pure terror and betrayal. He couldn't believe Roman would do this, and he especially couldn't believe Roman had allied with Brock of all people. Finally, Roman and Brock stood over the carnage they'd created, and Roman grabbed a microphone. What he said next sent shockwaves. Paul, you thought you could move on from the tribal chief? You thought you could build something without me? Let me remind you who made who in this business. And as for my new counsel, Roman gestured to Brock, the beast understands what you never did, Paul. Respect, loyalty, and most importantly, knowing your place. Let me ask you right now in the comments, is Roman Reigns justified in destroying Paul Heyman's faction after Paul moved on to manage others? Or did Roman betray the man who was loyal to him for years? Because this question is tearing the wrestling community apart. Now let's talk about the impossibility of this alliance from a character perspective, because Roman and Brock teaming up contradicts everything we know about both men's characters. Roman has been defined by his relationship with Paul Heyman for the past several years. Paul was the strategist, the mouthpiece, the political operator who helped Roman maintain power. Their bond seemed unbreakable. Roman even visited Paul in the hospital when Paul was attacked, showing genuine concern for his special counsel's well-being. So for Roman to turn on Paul now, to destroy Paul's new faction out of apparent jealousy or possessiveness that makes Roman look petty and insecure rather than the confident tribal chief he's supposed to be. A true leader would let Paul move on and prove they don't need any specific advisor to maintain dominance. Instead, Roman's actions suggest he can't succeed without Paul and is lashing out at being replaced. And Brock Lesnar? The beast incarnate has been a lone wolf his entire career. Brock doesn't join factions. Brock doesn't take orders. Brock doesn't align with anyone beyond temporary business arrangements with Paul Heyman himself. Brock's entire character is built on being an unstoppable force who needs nobody and respects strength above all else. So why would Brock align with Roman Reigns? What could Roman possibly offer Brock that would make this alliance worth it? Money? Brock has more money than he knows what to do with. Championships? Brock has won everything there is to win multiple times. Respect? Brock takes respect through violence, he doesn't earn it through alliances. The only way this alliance makes sense is if there's a deeper story we don't know yet, some revelation about Paul's betrayal that justifies both Roman and Brock's actions, or some shared goal that requires both men working together that will be revealed in coming weeks. Otherwise, this alliance contradicts fundamental aspects of both characters in ways that might damage them permanently. Trivia question for the wrestling newsletter family: how many times have Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar faced each other in singles matches at WrestleMania, and who won each encounter? Let's see who remembers their legendary rivalry history. Here's what makes me absolutely conflicted about this storyline. Part of me is hyped because Roman and Brock together could be the most unstoppable force WWE has ever created, but another part of me is furious because this alliance potentially ruins what made both characters special as individuals. Let me break down both perspectives, why this alliance is brilliant. Roman and Brock represent the two most dominant forces in modern WWE. Putting them together creates a pairing that no combination of wrestlers can believably defeat. That extreme imbalance can be fascinating storytelling if WWE leans into it, show other wrestlers desperately forming alliances and strategies to try to overcome this seemingly unbeatable duo. The drama comes from whether anyone can stop them rather than traditional back-and-forth competition. Additionally, Roman and Brock's contrasting styles create interesting dynamics. Roman is calculated, strategic, political. Brock is pure violence, straightforward, uncomplicated. Watching those personalities navigate partnership could produce compelling television if WWE actually explores their differences rather than just having them destroy people together. Why this alliance is terrible. Roman's character was defined by his relationship with Paul Heyman. Removing that relationship, especially through Roman turning on Paul rather than Paul betraying Roman, fundamentally changes who Roman is. The tribal chief was a thinking wrestler who used strategy and manipulation. Without Paul, is Roman just another tough guy? That seems like a downgrade. Brock's mystique was built on being untouchable and unpredictable. Making him part of a stable, even one with just two members, makes him seem smaller somehow. Brock works best as a force of nature that appears randomly to destroy things. Giving him a formal alliance makes him feel more normal when abnormal is what made him special. And Paul Heyman, the greatest manager in wrestling history, gets cast aside like yesterday's trash? After decades of loyalty to various top stars, Paul deserves better than being abandoned for a shock value storyline. Unless there's a redemption arc coming where Paul proves he's more valuable than either Roman or Brock realized, this treats a legend poorly. Do you think Roman and Brock's alliance is brilliant storytelling or character destroying for both men? Comment which perspective you agree with and why. Let's discuss Paul Heyman's Vision faction, because understanding what Paul was building helps determine whether Roman destroying it was justified or villainous. Based on recent SmackDown episodes, Paul apparently formed this faction after Roman's absence, recruiting wrestlers who he believed represented the future rather than clinging to Roman's fading empire. From Paul's perspective, this makes sense. Paul is a businessman and politician who's always attached himself to winners. If Roman was gone and seemed unlikely to return, Paul moving on to manage other talent is just smart career management. Paul doesn't owe Roman eternal loyalty if Roman abandoned WWE. That's a professional relationship, not a blood bond. But from Roman's perspective, Paul's actions represent the ultimate betrayal. Roman made Paul relevant again after years of Paul being associated with Brock, who barely wrestles. Roman gave Paul consistent television time, storyline importance, and association with the biggest star in wrestling. For Paul to immediately jump ship the moment Roman steps away suggests Paul never actually cared about Roman, he just cared about being attached to whoever has power. Both perspectives are valid, which is what makes this compelling. If WWE actually explores both sides rather than just presenting one as obviously right. Paul has legitimate reasons for moving on. Roman has legitimate reasons for feeling betrayed. The conflict isn't about good versus evil, it's about competing interests and different views of loyalty. The Vision faction itself seems to represent Paul's thesis about WWE's future: younger, hungrier talent who haven't been softened by years of political maneuvering. Drew McIntyre and Braun Breaker are killers who represent raw aggression rather than Roman's calculated domination. Paul seems to be arguing that WWE needs to evolve past the era of family factions and political chess games into something more primal and violent. That's actually an interesting philosophical position that could generate great storylines if WWE commits to it. But Roman and Brock destroying the Vision faction in 3 minutes suggests WWE isn't interested in that philosophical debate, they just wanted a shock value moment of old stars crushing new ones. Was Paul Heyman wrong to move on from Roman Reigns and form the Vision, or was he just being smart about his career? Comment whether you see Paul as disloyal or pragmatic. Here's my controversial take that's going to make people furious: Roman Reigns should have stayed away and let Paul Heyman build something new rather than returning to destroy the Vision faction out of apparent jealousy. One of wrestling's biggest problems is that established stars can't let new talent build their own legacies without interference from the previous generation. The Vision faction with Drew, Braun, and others managed by Paul had potential to be something fresh and different from the Bloodline. They could have established their own identity, their own storylines, their own place in WWE hierarchy. But Roman returning after just a few weeks to immediately crush them sends the message that the new generation doesn't actually matter. Old stars will always be more important and more powerful. This is the same pattern WWE has repeated for decades. New talent gets built up, seems poised to break through to the main event level, and then an established star returns or gets inserted into the storyline and suddenly the new talent is back in the midcard. It prevents WWE from ever creating the next generation of stars because fans learn that new people will always be positioned below returning legends. Roman should have stayed away longer, 6 months minimum. Let the Vision establish themselves, win some feuds, feel real as a faction. Then Roman returns, and his feud with the Vision feels like a legitimate clash between generations rather than an established star squashing upstarts. The eventual Roman victory, because of course Roman would win eventually, would mean more if the Vision had been built up as credible threats first. Instead, we get Roman and Brock destroying the Vision immediately, which makes the Vision look weak and makes Roman look like he can't handle the idea of Paul managing anyone else. That's not strong storytelling, that's ego protection for established stars at the expense of everyone else. I know fans are excited to see Roman back because he's incredible, but excitement for a moment shouldn't come at the cost of building WWE's future. The business needs new stars who can carry the company when Roman, Brock, and other current top stars eventually retire. Moments like this make it harder to create those stars. Super controversial. Should Roman have stayed away longer and let the Vision establish themselves? Or are you glad he returned immediately to destroy them? This will divide the audience completely. Now let's talk about Brock Lesnar's motivation for aligning with Roman, because Brock doesn't do anything without being paid extremely well, in kayfabe and reality. So what did Roman offer Brock to secure this alliance? Several possibilities. Possibility 1, shared enemy in Paul. Maybe Brock feels betrayed that Paul formed the Vision faction without consulting him. Paul managed Brock for years, and maybe Brock expected loyalty from Paul that he didn't receive. Aligning with Roman allows Brock to punish Paul while also having backup against the Vision faction's numbers advantage. Possibility 2, business arrangement. Roman offered Brock something valuable, maybe a guaranteed championship opportunity, maybe profit sharing from merchandise, maybe something we haven't seen yet. Brock is a mercenary at heart, so a pure business deal makes sense for his character. Possibility 3, respect for Roman. Despite their history as enemies, maybe Brock has come to respect Roman as the only wrestler who truly matches his own dominance. Brock values strength above everything, and Roman has proven himself as arguably WWE's most dominant champion ever. That mutual respect could be foundation for alliance. Possibility 4, setting up betrayal. Maybe this alliance is temporary and Brock is planning to betray Roman eventually. Brock helps Roman destroy the Vision, Roman thinks he has a loyal partner, and then Brock F5s Roman and takes whatever Roman promised him by force. Classic Brock move. Each possibility creates different story trajectories. WWE needs to clarify Brock's motivation soon, or this alliance feels arbitrary and unmotivated. The best wrestling storytelling gives clear reasons for character decisions even when those characters are heels or antiheroes. My gut says possibility 3 is most interesting, Brock respecting Roman's dominance enough to partner with him. That creates a fascinating dynamic where two alphas try to coexist in a partnership where both want to be the dominant force. The tension of whether they can maintain this alliance or whether their egos will inevitably clash is compelling. What do you think motivated Brock Lesnar to align with Roman? Vote for possibility 1, 2, 3, 4, or give your own theory. Let's address the match possibilities this alliance creates, because Roman and Brock as a team opens up dream matchups that WWE has never been able to book before. Roman and Brock versus Drew and Braun, the immediate follow-up where the Vision's top members get their revenge attempt in a tag team environment. Roman and Brock versus Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, WWE's biggest babyfaces teaming up to try to stop the seemingly unstoppable heel duo. Roman and Brock versus the Usos. If the bloodline fractures completely, maybe Jimmy and G try to stop Roman from going down this path. Roman and Brock versus Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu, internal bloodline warfare. If some members reject Roman's new direction. Roman versus Brock. Eventually, the alliance ends with these two fighting each other one more time for ultimate dominance. All of these matchups would be incredible if given proper build and time to develop. The key is whether WWE actually books competitive matches where Roman and Brock's opponents look credible, or whether this becomes a burial squad that makes everyone else look weak by comparison. The danger of having two megastars team up is that it can accidentally devalue everyone else on the roster. If Roman and Brock are unstoppable together, what does that say about everyone they defeat? Are all those wrestlers just not good enough? That creates a ceiling where other talent can't break through because they've been established as inferior to the megastar team. WWE needs to book this carefully, have Roman and Brock win most of the time, but make their victories difficult. Have their opponents take them to the limit, force them to show vulnerability, make fans believe that maybe this team will be the one to finally defeat them. That maintains Roman and Brock's dominance while protecting everyone else's credibility. What dream match do you most want to see involving Roman and Brock as a team? Give me your fantasy booking for their most interesting opponent. Here's something nobody is discussing: how does this affect the Bloodline's future? The Bloodline was built on family and loyalty with Roman as the absolute leader. But Roman aligning with Brock Lesnar, someone with zero and family connection, suggests Roman no longer views family as the most important thing, or that he's building a new kind of family based on dominance rather than blood. This could be the end of the Bloodline as we know it. The Usos, Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, they all committed to Roman based on family bonds. If Roman is now prioritizing alliances with outsiders like Brock over his actual cousins and family members, why should they remain loyal to him? This creates legitimate reasons for Bloodline members to rebel against Roman and form their own factions. Alternatively, maybe Roman is expanding the Bloodline's definition. Maybe the new Bloodline isn't about Samoan heritage but about dominance. Anyone who can prove themselves strong enough deserves to be part of the family. That's a fascinating evolution that could bring in completely unexpected members and create fresh dynamics. Or maybe, and this is the darkest possibility, Roman has realized that family-based factions inevitably lead to betrayal and conflict. He watched the Bloodline start fracturing, saw family members fighting each other, and decided that alliances based on mutual respect and shared goals are more reliable than blood bonds. That's a cynical worldview but could be interesting character development for Roman. Does Roman allying with Brock mean the Bloodline is dead, or is he evolving what the Bloodline means? Comment your take on the Bloodline's future. Here's my final analysis before I need your complete thoughts. Roman Reigns returning with Brock Lesnar to destroy Paul Heyman's Vision faction is either WWE's boldest storytelling move that creates the most dominant force in wrestling history, or it's a short-sighted decision that damages multiple characters and buries new talent for shock value. The execution was undeniably effective. Seeing Roman and Brock together was shocking, the attack was brutal and convincing, and everyone is talking about this storyline. That's success on some level. But the implications are concerning. Roman looks petty and possessive rather than secure in his dominance. Brock's mystique as a lone wolf is diminished by formal alliance. Paul Heyman looks foolish for not anticipating this. The Vision faction looks weak for being destroyed so easily. And new talent takes another hit from older stars refusing to let them establish their own identities. WWE needs to address these concerns through proper follow-through, explaining motivations clearly, giving the Vision opportunities to rebuild and show strength, exploring the relationship dynamics between Roman and Brock, and ultimately using this storyline to build the roster rather than just popping one big return moment. The wrestling world is watching to see if this is the beginning of something legendary or just another example of WWE sacrificing long-term building for short-term shock. If you made it through this entire breakdown, you're incredible. Do 3 things. First, smash the like button if you're conflicted about this alliance, hyped but also concerned. Second, leave detailed comments answering all my questions. Is Roman justified? Alliance brilliant or character destroying? Paul disloyal or pragmatic? Should Roman have stayed away? Brock's motivation? Dream matches? Bloodline's future? Third, subscribe and hit that bell because this story is exploding and I'm covering every development as Roman and Brock's dominance unfolds and the Vision fights back. This is either genius or disaster and we need to figure out which together.